post change how we see people? When does expression become hate? And if words can influence minds, what happens next? These questions may seem simple, but they reveal something very important about the world we live in today. Every day we are exposed to thousands of media messages through television, newspapers, websites, and especially social media. These messages influence how we understand events, how we form opinions, and how we perceive other people. Because of this, the media is not simply a source of information. It is also a powerful force that shapes society. Now, a pleasant day, everybody listening right now. So, I am Jobi Comahig, and together with my fellow members, Carlos Balbin, Christian Lomonsod, and Glian Florenosos, today we will tackle on the book Media and Information Literacy, Reinforcing Human Rights, Countering Radicalization and Extremism. Now, from this book, we focus on the chapter entitled Hate Speech and Incitement. This chapter examines how media messages can shape attitudes, reinforce stereotypes, and sometimes contribute to discrimination when audiences fail to critically analyze the information they receive. Now, this chapter reminds us that the words are not neutral. The language used in media can influence how individuals and entire groups are perceived by society. Because of this, understanding media messages is essential in protecting human rights and promoting social inclusion. Now, to understand how media influences our attitudes, let us go and take examine two different headlines reporting on the same issue. Now, analyze the first headline, which uses the term unauthorized immigrants. This wording focuses on legal status and presents the issue in a relatively neutral and descriptive manner. It informs readers about a situation without immediately attaching in negative judgments to the individuals involved. Now, the second headline uses the phrase illegal aliens and emphasizes removing people out of the United States. Although it discusses the same issue, the language creates a very different impression. The word illegal immediately associates the individuals with criminality, while the word alien creates distance by portraying them as outsiders rather than as human beings. Both headlines discuss immigration, yet they encourage audiences to interpret the issue differently. One presents information in a more neutral way, while the other frames the issue in a manner that may provoke fear, suspicion, or hostility. Now, this brings us to my topic, understanding and representing diversity, a media literacy education response to discrimination in news media representations. Now, this topic examines how media representations influence our understanding of diverse social groups and how media and information literacy, or MIL, can help individuals recognize and challenge discriminatory portrayals. Now, the main argument of this topic is that media does not simply reflect reality, it actively constructs it. Now, what I mean by this is that the way people and communities are represented in media directly affects the public perception, social attitudes, political decisions, and the treatment of different groups within society. Now, in other words, representation is not merely about visibility. Representation is about power. Those who are represented fairly are more likely to be understood and respected, while those who are misrepresented are often faced with misunderstandings, prejudice, and discrimination. Now, again, media as a constructor of meaning. Many people assume that media simply reports facts. However, media organizations constantly make decisions about what information is present and how that information should be presented. Now, media professionals decide which stories deserve attention, which voices will be included, which details will be emphasized, and which perspectives will be omitted. Because of these choices, media does not provide a perfectly objective picture of reality. Instead, it creates particular interpretations of reality. Now, for example, if a specific social group is repeatedly associated with crime in news reports, audiences may begin to to connect rather the group with criminal behavior. Even when most members of the group have done nothing wrong, over time, repeated exposure can shape public attitudes and beliefs. Now, there are various forms of this in media, or the various forms of misrepresentation. Now, first is stereotyping. So, stereotyping occurs when media reduces an entire group to few simplified characteristics. These portrayals ignore individual differences and create generalized assumptions instead of seeing people as unique individuals. Audiences begin to see them through labels and preconceived ideas. Next is underrepresentation. Underrepresentation occurs when certain groups rarely appear in media content or are excluded altogether. When groups are invisible in media, their experiences, perspectives, and contributions may also become invisible within society. This lack of representation can contribute to marginalization and exclusion. Next is negative farming. Now, negative farming occurs when media repeatedly associates certain groups with problems such as crime, violence, conflict, poverty, or social disorder. Although these issues may be real, focusing on almost exclusively on negative aspects creates an incomplete and often unfair portrayal. Now, one of the most powerful features of media is repetition. And because when audiences repeatedly encounter the same portrayals, stereotypes, and narratives, these representations begin to feel normal and unquestionable. Eventually, biased assumptions may become accepted as common sense rather than recognized as prejudice. This process is dangerous because discrimination becomes hidden within everyday thinking and social practices. Now, how does this affect society, or how does it affect the audiences? Now, media representations shape how audiences understand social groups. Now, even individuals who have never personally interacted with a particular community may develop opinions based solely on media portrayals. As a result, media can influence beliefs, attitudes, expectations, and behaviors toward others, as I explained earlier. Now, how does this affect marginalized groups? Now, the effects are often greater, even greater for those being represented. Negative portrayals can lead to social exclusion, reduced opportunities, lower self esteem, feelings of invisibility, increased discrimination, and a key insight is that media inequality frequently contributes to social inequality. When some groups are consistently misrepresented, uh, they may also experience unequal treatment in society. Now, there is a very important role of education in addressing this problem. So, in this specific topic in the chapter, a study was conducted, and the purpose of the study was that the people wanted to recognize the influence of media representations, and researchers sought to determine whether media and information literacy education could help students identify and challenge discrimination in news media. Now, their goal was not simply to teach students how to consume media, but to help them become critical and responsible media users. Now, what did the researchers do in this study? So, the researchers conducted a classroom-based media literacy intervention involving students who analyzed authentic news reports and media materials. Now, the selected materials focus on the representation of diverse groups, particularly immigrants and minority communities. Now, the students were asked to analyze media representations, identify the patterns of inclusion and exclusion, examine language choices, and evaluate framing techniques, reflect on their own assumptions, and develop alternative and more balanced representations. Now, before interventions or before their initial observations of the researchers were that many students viewed news media as objective and neutral. Most accepted media messages at face value and rarely questioned the language, perspectives, or framing techniques used by journalists. Now, this finding reflects a common assumption that news simply represents facts rather than constructed interpretations. Now, were the changes after the guided analysis? Now, as students engage in critical discussions and activities, significant changes occurred. They became more aware of stereotypes in media coverage, biased language, missing perspectives, and the power relationships within media narratives. Students began asking deeper questions such as, why was this word chosen? Who benefits from this representation? Whose voices are missing? And how might the story look from another perspective? Now, these questions demonstrate the development of critical thinking skills. Now, overall, the study or the conclusion of the study was that the media and information literacy education can effectively help students recognize discrimination in media representations and challenge bias and narratives. The findings also show that learning becomes more meaningful when students engage with real world examples rather than relying solely on abstract theories. Now, what what if we were to compare the traditional approach in these topics versus the improved media literacy education? So, traditional approaches usually in media literacy education often focuses on identifying bias and analyzing media texts. So, although useful, the approach can sometimes feel overly theoretical and disconnected from students' everyday lives. Now, in the study or the improved approach was that the study recommends a more participatory and reflective approach. The lessons should be connected to the students' identities, personal experiences, community issues, and current social concerns. And when students see how media affects their own lives and communities, they became more engaged and more motivated to learn. Learning shifts from simple memorization to meaningful understanding. Now, media production as a learning tool. So, an important finding of the study is that media literacy should involve not only analyzing media but also creating it. Now, why does media creation matter? Because it deepens understanding. When students produce media content themselves, they gain first-hand experience with the choices involved in communication. They learn that every image, headline, quote, and editing decision influences meaning. Now, it also builds critical awareness. Creating media helps students recognize that media messages are constructed rather than naturally occurring. This understanding makes them more critical consumers of information. It also encourages representation and inclusion. Media creation allows students to share perspectives that may be overlooked in mainstream media. It also provides opportunities for marginalized voices to be heard and represented fairly. As a result, students become more active participants in shaping public conversations. Now, what was the transformation of students through media literacy? Now, one of the most significant outcomes of the study was the transformation observed in students, as I said, because before MIL, students were often passive consumers of information. They were less likely to question media messages, or they were unaware of hidden biases and were more accepting of stereotypes. But after MIL, students become more critical thinkers, more reflective media users, more aware of discrimination, and better able to challenge unfair representations. Now, most importantly, they began to recognize their own role in promoting fairness, diversity, and inclusion. Rather than simply consuming information, they became active participants in social change. Now, let's take a look at this in a deeper analysis. And why does representation matter? Because there is power behind representation. Representation is closely, again, as I said, connected to power. Those who control media narratives often influence how societies understand important issues and social groups. By deciding who is visible, who is invisible, and how stories are framed, media institutions can shape public opinion on a much larger scale. Now, there is a hidden influence of media. Media influence is often subtle. Most people are unaware of how strongly media messages affect their beliefs and attitudes. Because these influences are gradual and repetitive, they can be more powerful than direct persuasion. So this is why media information literacy is essential. Because without MILs, the individuals may become vulnerable to misinformation, stereotypes, prejudice, and manipulation. And whereas with MIL, people learn to question, evaluate, respond thoughtfully to media messages. Instead of accepting information passively, they become informed and responsible citizens. Now, overall, media representation shapes how we see others, how we understand society, and even how we see ourselves. Now, when media misrepresents groups through stereotypes, exclusion, or negative framing, it can contribute to discrimination, prejudice, and social division. However, media and information literacy provides a powerful solution by teaching individuals to critically analyze media messages, recognize bias, and create more inclusive representations of me. And then MIL promotes fairness, empathy, and social responsibility. Ultimately, understanding diversity in media is not only about improving communication, it is about creating a more inclusive society where all people are represented with dignity and respect. And if media can change how we see others, then learning to question it is not just a skill, it is a responsibility.
Now, in this presentation, I will discuss a case study of Brazilian social networks, show how hate speech spreads online, what causes it, its effects, how we Filipinos can relate, and how we can address it through media and information literacy and education for tolerance. Now, before we start, let's try to imagine that you are in this scenario. So, as you scroll through social media, a, hate, a hateful post is uploaded online. The message targets a certain group of people using offensive and discriminatory words. Then you go to the comment section. Many users react and share the post. Because of social media, hate speech spreads quickly and reaches many people. The post becomes viral. More people see it, and the harmful messages gains attention and influences online. The targeted group begins to feel hurt, unsafe, and discriminated against. Hate speech can damage a person's confidence, mental health, and sense of belonging. Online hate starts affecting real life. People begin bullying, excluding, or verbally attacking others because of the idea they saw online. Then, the community becomes divided. Hate speech can create fear, misunderstanding, and conflict between peoples and groups. Now, what does this short scenario tells us? Obviously, hate speech and social media. This shows that hate speech does not only stay on social media, it can harm individuals and destroy unity and communities. Social media's impact is really wide. Social media has changed how people communicate, learn, and interact on a daily basis. Information now spreads instantly, trends rise and fall, and people can influence others even without being famous. It has reshaped culture, opinions, and even behaviors, making it making its impact feel fast, powerful, and sometimes unpredictable. It turned us into consumers to content creators or producers. Before, people were mostly audience who TV, watch TV or read news. But now, almost everyone can create content. With just a phone, we can post videos, share opinions, tell stories, or express creativity. This gives individuals a voice and opportunity to be heard. But it also means we carry responsibility for what we share. With different platforms, many people can see our contents. Platforms like Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube allows content to reach a wide audience beyond just friends or family. A single post can go viral and be seen by thousands or even millions of people. This wide reach increases influence, but also raises the risk of spreading misinformation or harmful content. This builds community and engage in real-time conversations. Social media connects people with similar interests, beliefs, or experiences, forming online communities. This This space allows users to interact instantly through comments, messages, or live stream. Real-time conversations make communications more engaging and dynamic, but they can also lead to quick reactions without carefully thinking, which is why responsible communities is important. Now, I'd like to share a surprising fact. Did you know that Brazilian and Philippines are often called digital twins? Yes, because both countries are among the top social media users in the world. Philippines spends about 3 hours and 38 minutes daily online, while Brazilian follows closely behind also. More than 60 of the people in both countries rely on social media as their main news sources. Because of this, social media becomes a powerful space where information spreads quickly, including hate speech. So, what is happening in Brazilian what is happening in Brazil is very similar to what we experience here in the Philippines. Now let's have a context overview. In January 2016, Jer Bolsonaro criticized a post by Nova Escolena magazine on Facebook. The post showed a child, which is a boy, dressed as a princess, which he linked to social education issues. Because of his influence, the post quickly spreads online. This situation gained public attention and started a discussion online, showing how one post from a public figure can influence many people. The post received different reactions. Some people responded with hate speech, others supported Bolsonaro's opinion, while some defended the magazine respectfully. This shows how social media can create conflict where people expresses different opinions, sometimes in harmful ways. The main cause of the issue is misinformation and strong personal belief. Many people reacted without verifying the information because the topic involves sensitive issues like gender and sexuality. People became emotional, which lead to arguments and hate speech. There are similar issues that can be found in the Philippines, like this. This is where I found from TikTok, where he was just filming himself a gay person with a filter just for fun. Now, as you can see in the comments, there are many hateful comments that can ruin that person's confidence. Second picture, as you can see, that's a old woman just making contents for fun. And for that, he got bashed and received a lot of hateful comments or hate speech, as you can see. Now, in this third image, this person claimed that the Mindanao is like Africa, and that results to a conflict between the Mindanao and the Mindanao people and the Luzon people, which they shared hateful speech to each other because of that claim only. Now, how does social media worsen these issues? First is it spreads harmful messages fast. Online platforms allow contents to be shared instantly. So harmful messages like hate speech or offensive posts can reach a large number of people in just seconds. This speed makes it difficult to control or stop the damage once it starts. Second is anonymity reduces accountability. Many users can hide behind fake names or accounts, which makes them feel less responsible for their actions. Because of this, some people are more likely to say harmful or offensive things they wouldn't say in real life. Third is users in online often interact with people with the same views. Social media algorithms tend to show content similar to what users already like or agree with. This creates echo chambers where people mostly see opinions that match their own, limiting exposure to different perspectives. Fourth is fake information spreads easily. False or misleading information can spread quickly because people often share a post without checking if they are true. Once shared widely, it becomes harder to connect and influence how people think or act. And lastly, provocation leads to more hate. Some content is designed to provoke strong emotions like anger or frustration. When people react emotionally, they may respond with more negativity or hate, creating a cycle where harmful behaviors continue to grow online. Take a look at this example as proof of those what I have said. This is a fact from the case study of Brazilian social network, which is what we have discussed of that context overview. Now, in the comments, that diagram describes the comments. So, that 16 over there is just who supported. That 9 is the people who verified information. And that 25 over there is the offensive and hate speech, or irony rather, that shows how it can affect, that shows how social media can affect or worsen the issue. Now, let's discuss its effects. First is emotional and psychological harm. Exposure to hate speech and negative content online can deeply affect a person's mental health. It can lead to feelings of anxiety, fear, low self-esteem, and even depression, especially when individuals are repeatedly targeted or attacked online. Second is social division. Harmful content can create separations between groups of people by strengthening prejudice and misunderstanding. Instead of promoting unity, it builds us versus them, making it harder for different communities to relate to each other. Third is it can increase conflicts and violence. Online hate and misinformation can escalate into real world arguments, discrimination, or even physical violence. When people are influenced by extreme or false ideas, they may act aggressively towards others. Fourth is normalization of discrimination. When hate speech and offensive behavior are constantly seen online, people may start to think it is normal or acceptable. This reduces sensitivity to discrimination and allows harmful attitudes to continue. And lastly, negative impact on community harmony. All these effects weaken trust, respect, and cooperation within a community. And instead of a peaceful and supportive environment, communities became divided and tense, making it harder for people to live and interact harmoniously. Now, how does MIL, information literacy, or MIL, and education for tolerance help us in these conflicts or issues? Before we dig into that deeper, let's have a short discussion of media information literacy and education for tolerance. So, with media and information literacy, it teaches us to think critically before sharing online content, verify information to avoid spreading false claims, and analyze messages to recognize bias or manipulation. Now, for education for tolerance, it helps us to learn respect differences in opinion, identity, and lifestyle, interact with others respectfully despite disagreements, and reject hate speech and discriminatory behavior. Now, let's go back to that question. How does MIL and education for tolerance help us in these issues or conflicts? Now, MIL teaches us critical thinking. Before sharing, media information literacy encourages people to pause and evaluate contents before posting or sharing it. This means checking if the information is accurate, understanding its purpose, and thinking about its possible impact on others. Next is MIL promotes responsible online behavior. MIL helps users become more aware of their actions online. It teaches us that communicate it teaches us to communicate respectfully, avoid spreading harmful or false content, and understand that their digital action have real world consequences. So, and I tolerance education and tolerance education teaches us to respect for differences. Learning about tolerance helps individuals accept and respect people with different beliefs, cultures, and perspective. It promotes empathy and understanding instead of judgment or discrimination. Next is MIL and tolerance reduces online conflicts. When people think critically and respect for others' differences, they are less likely to engage in arguments or spread negativity that leads to fewer misunderstandings and more peaceful online environment. It helps people respond wisely, not emotionally. Next is MIL and tolerance guide individuals to their reactions, especially in heated situations and arguments. Instead of reacting with anger or hate, they learn to respond calmly, logically, and respectfully. Now let's go to freedom versus respect. In media and information literacy, freedom and respect must go hand in hand. When communicating, especially online, freedom allows individuals to express their thoughts, share ideas, and access information, but it's not unlimited. It comes with the responsibility to show respect towards others by considering their beliefs, identities, and feelings. This means avoiding harmful actions such as spreading misinformation, engaging in hate speech, or cyberbullying. A media literate person understands that while they have the right to speak, they also have the duty to ensure their words do not harm others. In the way, balancing freedom and respect helps create a safer, more responsible, and more inclusive media environment. So in summary, hate speech online harms people and society quickly. Hate speech targets individuals or groups based on identity like race, religion, or gender, which can cause emotional pain, fear, and even real-world conflicts because of its public and often repeated. It can normalize discrimination and divide communities. Social media worsen it by spreading content. Social media platforms allow posts to be shared instantly and widely. A single harmful message can go viral in minutes, reaching thousands or even millions of people, making the impact stronger and harder to control. With media and information literacy, it teaches us critical thinking. It helps people analyze and question the content they see online instead of believing or sharing it right away. It encourages users to check facts, understand context, and recognize harmful or misleading messages. With education for tolerance and responsible online behavior, it reduces discrimination and promotes inclusion. When people are taught to respect differences and communicate responsibly, They are less likely to engage in hate speech. This promotes a more positive environment where diversity is accepted and everyone feels included and valued.
Good day, everyone. Before I begin, I want you to think about this for a second. How well do we really know the people around us? We scroll past hundreds of faces online every day. We react to posts, share opinions, and connect through screens. But connection doesn't always mean understanding. Good day once again. I am Glian Florenosos, and today I am going to talk about the ghosts that live in our phones. My topic is about collaborative learning and intercultural understanding, and how media can either divide us or help us understand each other better. Now, let's start with a face we all know. I know most of you are familiar with her. She is one of the most famous actresses here in the country. But let's look back at a much older controversy that defined her public image for years, back from 2013. The headline exploded. Drunk Ann Curtis slaps John Lloyd Cruz, shouts, "I can buy you, your friends, in this club." Now, the incident happened at a club in Taguig. According to reports, Anne had a confrontation with actor John Lloyd Cruz and two others, allegedly slapping them and shouting those now infamous words. Now, the public reaction was instant and brutal when they found out. People labeled her humbug and privilege. But what was the context? Anne later revealed that she was on a strict juice cleanse, meaning no solid food for days. And a few drinks on an empty stomach led to a total blackout. But the question is, did she actually say the line? In a recent podcast, she revealed that when she asked the people who were actually there, who witnessed the incident, if she said those words. And they told her no. But even though it likely never happened, the media narrative was so powerful. She felt she had no choice but to accept it, apologize, and move on. Now, let me ask you a question. Have you ever judged someone you've never met just because of what you saw online? Let's be honest with ourselves, we all have. We do it to celebrities or public figures, but we also do it to people in our own communities. When we see a viral video of a stranger, we immediately think we know their character. We comment, we share, and we judge. Now, in this image, we see the nation's girl group, Beanie, arriving at the airport. But look at the headline. Beanie faces backlash for wearing sunglasses and mask at Cebu Airport. Before we even knew why they were dressed this way, the internet had already decided they were in the wrong. The moment that photo was posted, the algorithm went to work. Instead of showing us the context, it showed us the conflict. Look at these comments. They were very harsh. But then eventually, the silence was broken. Direct Lauren, the head of Star Magic and the group's manager, addressed the issue directly. While the feed was busy mocking them, the actual reality was much different. According to the official ABS-CBN News and News 5 press conference coverage from July 11, 2024, the truth was the group had just finished a grueling 3-night solo concert with almost no rest. And Direct Lauren also clarified that the members were very tired, lacking sleep, and that some of them were not even feeling well. So they didn't wear masks to act famous. Well, they are famous. Um, they didn't wear masks to act superior. They wore them because they were physically exhausted and ill. Now this leads us to a scary reality. Our truth is often just a reflection of our social media feed. We tend to accept what we see on our screens as the absolute truth. But we have to remember na the internet usually prioritizes engagement and drama over the actual context. But this isn't just about one group or one actress. Look at these comments or other examples on the slides. We see headlines like barley, gamot sa cancer, or dramatic warnings to beware of certain products and people. Now, why does this happen? It's because we are constantly fed these social media truths. When we don't have direct experience with a product or a person, our brains look for the easiest answer provided by our feed. And that's the time na we stop being researchers, we stop being critical thinkers, and start being just consumers of a narrative that might be completely false. So, we've seen how this happens to one person or a group. But what happens when an entire nation is ghosted? To find out, we look at a study involving students in Japan and China. These are neighbors who share thousands of years of history, but separated by more than just an ocean. So, what the study found was an extremely negative view of each other. And here is why. It starts with history. The background of the Japanese invasion of China is a deep wound. Okay, let's say. But instead of healing, that wound is constantly reopened by what they see online. Because the students have no direct contact, they rely on these historical shadows to define their neighbors today. And this is the root cause. Since the invasion is what's instilled in them by what is constantly reinforced by their social media feeds, they choose to hate each other. They let a screen from the past dictate their reality in the present. Now, we might think nga that's Japan and China, they are different. They have a different history. But if we look closer, the same wall is being built right here in the Philippines. Think about how people in the north view those as here in the south, and vice versa. Because we don't always hang out or talk in real life, we let our feeds tell us who our fellow Filipinos are. First, many people in Luzon view us here in Mindanao as just being Bisaya, using the word as an insult instead of recognizing it as a language. Then, here in Mindanao, our usual rebat is to call them pagpag eaters. Look at these comments. Here are other examples of what I am saying. Sarap mabuhay pag hindi ka Bisaya. Imagine you only live once, tas Bisaya ka pa. So even in a discussion about high-end places like BGC, people use Bisaya as a synonym for squatter or uncivilized. It shows nga a regional identity is being turned into a stereotype. and eventually into an insult. On the slide, we see the word bisakol. Originally, I hear this, pero this refers to people with roots in both Bicol and Visayas. But online, it's being used as an insult. Look at the first post. It says, ganito pala kapag walang Bisaya at Bisakol sa Maynila. Walang traffic. The hate here feels so forced. It's like they just want to have something to comment on, even if it doesn't make sense. So, whether it's about traffic or how someone plays a game, the word is used to make others feel less than. But as we know, every action has a reaction. So since people from Mindanao feel attacked, they create their own comebacks to strike back. Look at the first screenshot. It shows someone saying, pag mayayabang na Tagalog, pabigat yan sa bahay at squatter. Even though it's just a game, people are already using regional labels to call each other whatever names. And then look at the second post from a group called Tagalog versus Bisaya Online Rambulan. They even have a Facebook group. They posted a new map of the Philippines where Luzon is completely gone, as you can see. So instead of using media to connect with one another, we are using it to turn our own islands against each other. Okay, so next slide. So on this slide, we see the term Tangalo. Just like how Bisaya is used as an insult in the north, this is the rebut from the south. So finally, we have the label Pagpag Eaters. This is another way the digital wall creates a distorted version of reality. People use viral videos of poverty in Manila to judge everyone living there. They generalize it. So, all these screenshots show one thing. If we are not media literate, instead of connecting people, we end up spreading hate and division. Now, why is this division so intense? First, we have the algorithm. Its only job is to keep us scrolling. It prioritizes high engagement content, which often means posts that trigger anger or controversy. Next are stereotypes. When we see a viral image, our brains use shortcuts. We stop seeing the person as an individual and start labeling them based on biased generalizations, like assuming someone is arrogant just for wearing a mask or sunglasses, like our example earlier, without knowing their situation. So, we have next is screen distance. The digital barrier makes us forget there is a real human being on the other side of the post. This distance causes a dissociation where we lose our empathy, making it easy to send hate comments and cancel others. Together, these three forces create a perfect storm for intense division. They take a single, decontextualized post and turn it into a viral cycle of judgment. So how does the Japan-China study relate to what we've just seen? The data is the same. According to the study, 92% of students form negative image of others through TV and 27% do so through the internet. This happens even without any personal experience or direct interaction with those people. So it all comes down to this broken math. Lack of direct interaction plus heavy media consumption equals deep prejudice. We start to believe the labels are the whole truth. Then, going back to the study, they found a way to fight this digital storytelling, or DST. Instead of more hate, students made videos about their plain life, their school, food, and music. They proved that authenticity is stronger than any toxic comment section. Now, you might ask, what was the result? 83% of students changed their minds. Their views became favorable because they finally saw the sincerity. So we can do this right here in CDO. Through our vlogs of our life or our local culture, we end the Baduy labels. We show the world and Luzon our real truth. Like the saying goes, the shortest distance between two people is a story. When we tell our story, we move past the assumptions and just connect as people. Previously, we've seen how this girl was deceived by the three forces, the algorithms, the stereotypes, and the screen distance. Now we've discussed why this division is so intense for her. But she isn't staying a victim. Now she is fighting back. How can she and how can we actually practice a better way of connecting? This is where we use the 5 C's of media and information literacy. Let's imagine her story again. But this time, she practices the 5 C's. So, first is critical thinking. This is our filter. It's the ability to stop and ask, is this showing me the whole truth or just a piece of it? Verify the source. Before you get angry at a post, check who made it. Is it a person with an agenda? Or is it just someone who's looking for clout? Then, spot the red flags. Look for the triggers. If a video uses rage bait titles or extreme labels like baduy or squammy, that's a red flag. It's designed to make you hate, not to inform you. So when you see that red flag, don't engage. Next is communication. In MIL, this isn't just about talking. It's about how we exchange ideas across the screen. So engage in respectful dialogue. When we see someone from another region, we don't start with an insult. We talk to them like a person na we should respect. If we want them to respect our culture, we have to show that same respect to theirs. Okay, after all, it's a two-way street. Listen more than you comment. Most internet wars happen because everyone wants to be heard, but nobody wants to listen. So, before you type that reply, try to understand the context first. The third C is collaboration. This is where we stop being users and start being creators. It's about working together to change the narrative of the Philippines. So, stitch and do it for good. Instead of using these tools to mock others, use them to connect. For example, if someone from Luzon posts about their local food, stitch it and show our version here in CDO. Use the algorithm to show our similarities, not just our difference. Highlights 3. Highlight shared experiences. At the end of the day, we all struggle with slow internet and high prices. So when we highlight these shared Pinoy moments, we prove that we have more in common than the media wants us to believe. Then next C is creativity. This is our power to change the vibe of the internet. We aren't just consumers of content. We are the ones who decide what kind of stories get told about Mindanao, what kind of stories get told about the Philippines. Tell your own regional stories. If we don't tell our own story, someone else will, and they'll probably get it wrong. So whether it's a vlog about our school, a TikTok of our local street food, or a post about our history, your creativity is what kills the stereotypes. Then lastly, the last C is citizenship. It's about being a netizen who builds up the country instead of tearing it down. Treat every Filipino as equal, whether they are from the north or the south, whether they speak Tagalog, Bisaya, or Ilocano. Strip away the labels. MIL teaches us that behind every accent and every region is a person with the same dignity as you. And be a responsible digital citizen. Before you hit share or comment, ask yourself, am I helping my country or am I just feeding the hate? Because a true digital citizen uses their platform to unite and not to divide. So instead of being a victim of misinformation and division, she becomes a media literate netizen, someone who thinks, speaks, acts, and creates responsibly. And that is the power of practicing the 5 C's of media and information literacy. So, my final challenge to all of you is this. Don't let a screen tell you who your fellow Filipino is. The algorithm wants you angry. The stereotypes want you divided. But a media literate student is too smart to fall for that. Use your phones to tell the real story of our people. Use MIL to see the truth. Thank you, everyone.
Have you ever wondered why there is war? Have you ever also wondered why there are battles to be fought? And how can we, the new generation, use modern ways in order to help prevent more casualties? Hi, I'm Sage, and before we start, let me tell you a story. Imagine a regular afternoon. You are relaxing at home when a national politician appears on your television screen. Without any warning, he announces that citizens of a specific foreign nation, Israelis in this context, are suddenly no longer welcome in your country. This aggressive political declaration immediately sparks deep confusion and surprise. This stark statement triggers an intense internal dilemma that worries a lot of people in your country, including yourself. So, alone in the dim light of your room, you are left completely unsettled, wondering why there is so much toxic hatred and despise directed towards the opposing nations or the other nations that your country is seemingly in battle with or in conflict with. So your mind begins visualizing the terrible physical costs of these structural systems. You become deeply alarmed by the severe destruction and architectural devastation and endless cycle of human trauma that global wars bring to everyday civilian populations. Deeply concerned by the harsh reality of war, you go straight to your computer. You begin conducting independent research online to uncover the truth and seek objective answers regarding the gruesome realities of international conflict. As you review pages of political messaging, an innovative idea strikes you. What if traditional mass media is creating a bias bubble? What if we could design an interactive digital interface that completely strips away propaganda and forces people to examine a conflict impartially? Basically, bursting a bubble and connecting the bubble together. In this case, bursting the bubble and connecting the citizens of those countries who are in conflict with each other. Well, this theoretical idea, or what if, matches an actual software application called Global Conflicts Palestine. This specific 3D educational platform was engineered explicitly to transform how people conceptualize international crisis zones. It aims to give people a sense of impartiality or strip the bias towards their country by exploring the casualties or effects of war on people. This game was developed in 2007 by the studio Serious Game Interactive. It was built using the Unity engine and achieved cross-sector backing, earning support from the Danish Agency for Science, Technology, and Innovation, and the IT University of Copenhagen. This intersection of gaming and conflict resolution attracted many academic researchers. Dr. Ronit Kampf, for one, a prominent PhD in communication from Tel Aviv University, recognized the game's unique potential to serve as the empirical testing environment for such hypotheses. Dr. Kampf launched a landmark tracking study to measure the game's cognitive impact. Her final published research paper serves as our core structural template for this presentation. The project evaluates the long-term cognitive shifts that occur when individuals play a simulation based on active regional conflicts, moving away from passive news absorption towards active participation. So like I said earlier, this game simulates a digital world, but in this case, when you open the game, you're being faced or you're being encountered with a myriad of everyday situations of what war or international conflict means for us everyday people. Well, the central research query asks, can interactive simulation actually dismantle deeply ingrained nationalistic biases, or do political viewpoints remain unchanged after the game is over? To map out the study's trajectory, we must look closely at how the application uses systematic gameplay stages to guide players through unfamiliar socio-political perspectives. So as I said earlier, it tries to simulate the world or your country at war. So it aims to give the players a sense of pity or an awakening as to the harsh realities that war brings to us everyday people and its effects on even young children. But that is not the main theme here. The core theme of global conflicts is the pen versus the sword. Rather than going out to war with a gun or like a Call of Duty type of game, you don't just go into the battlefield and kill a lot of people with a gun or with a sniper or whatever artillery. What do you call it? Like your arsenal. The main objective of this game is to build a completely truthful, neutral, and unbiased news article. So it aims to teach us the role of unbiased and truthful journalism and its effects on how citizens of different countries interact with each other without any meandered or any fake news or manipulated type of information. So it's basically saying it's stating the events as is and not trying to alter reality in any sort of different way. So yeah, the main objective of the user or the players is to build a completely truthful, neutral, and unbiased news article. To do this, the users must wander through high tension areas and gather their data directly from virtual citizens representing both sides of the divide. The fundamental game mechanic revolves around active listening. You construct your final articles by manually collecting quotes from the various non-player characters or the NPCs. So you go around into your virtual world or the open world and you try to ask information from all the what do you call it, the NPCs and their situations, and you try to gather intel or information regarding what is happening and what are the effects of the war towards your country, or the what do you call it, the conflict is causing your country, or the effects of the conflict rather. So yeah, so the fundamental game mechanic revolves around active listening. You construct your final articles by manually collecting quotes, as I said earlier. So the application forces players to develop critical media literacy and editorial judgment. You must open your digital notebook, filter out emotionally charged rhetoric, and identify objective truths. So, as a journalist myself, this is a personal experience that I use, that I integrate in using my articles. Although I am a feature writer, I humanize and give a sense of sort of bias in a way to make news more humanized. But to be a good journalist is to know when to pull out your subjective biases in order to sieve the information into one single narrative that does not fit the situation but is giving the harsh truth, because that is what journalism is all about. Once you have sorted through the quotes and organized an independent narrative, you phone your final article directly to the main office database for public publication. This structural approach transitions our report to part 2, the conceptual framework. So, now from the game itself, let's kind of generalize what are the inherent effects of the usage of journalism in the real world conflicts, and in this case, war and international conflicts. So yeah, our analysis relies on 4 fundamental theoretical pillars: facilitating multi-perspectivity, analyzing peace versus war journalism, utilizing truth verification to de-escalate tension, and establishing an open public sphere. Let's break down to the first pillar: multi-perspectivity. So now, what does multi-perspectivity mean? It's kind of a big word, but don't be intimidated. Well, this simulation actively deconstructs rigid nationalistic bias by removing one-sided ethnocentric narratives. It builds a neutral cognitive bridge for dialogue, prompting users to explore deep historical issues beneath superficial military bravado. So, by giving multi-perspectivity, it kind of humanizes in a way the perspective or the experiences of even the men in suits or those who are trying to fight for their country. Even the army or the military themselves, they are being subjected to a series of analysis in which it kind of decodes the different principles or the different narratives of which the military uses in order to conduct their duties. So basically saying it's kind of gathering the different branches of a plant. That's what I'm trying to say. So it's not just a surface truth thing. The game tries to provide more multi-perspectivity by trying to not only narrow down all of the information you're being given in the game, but also delve into the historical impact or the context behind why such matters even occur. So the second pillar is peace journalism versus war journalism. Now you must be thinking, what's the difference between peace journalism and war journalism? They sound the same, but what are the differences and why are they different? Traditional war journalism frames conflicts like a sports game, tracking simple casualty tallies and heightening public animosity. So traditional war journalism is kind of revolving towards a more close-minded and trying to bend the truth towards a linear or one-sided narrative in which the other side is being be patronized, or you are trying to make the other side more volatile. Conversely, peace journalism is the opposite, and that is the most ethical type of journalism that we use up today. Peace journalism examines not only the types of information that you receive in everyday conflict, but it examines the root causes, amplifies marginalized viewpoints, and highlights diplomatic avenues towards peace. So rather than being like a referee and trying to find a way for the two opposing forces to proliferate their argument or their conflict, you try to mediate the conflict by using peace journalism in order to provide a more unbiased side and to come across between the two sides as a natural and an unbiased perspective. So, number 3, let's look about how verified data can lower public hostility. By avoiding sensationalism and using straightforward verified truths, journalists can act as objective peacekeepers that validate personal experiences. So, as I've said, as a journalist myself, I have an experience towards knowing these type of stuff, like how journalism can provide a unbiased space or let's say a common ground for two opposing forces to find common ground in order for them to deliberate and construct peace upon. So it's basically like making a bridge. So the fourth pillar focuses on constructing an open public sphere, much close to the third pillar. So by providing a shared digital town square, or like a space for them to communicate, the simulation humanizes the opposing nation. As I said, humanizes, shifting public attention from military engagement to strategic diplomacy. So, to evaluate these theories empirically, Dr. Ronit Kampf applied them to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This dispute has resulted in an estimated of 450,000 casualties over the decades, creating a deeply polarized social environment. The clear objective of this empirical study was to evaluate both the short-term and the long-term cognitive impact of this game on the overall perspective of citizens living on both sides of the conflict. The study featured a sample size of 180 total undergraduate students. So, this included 100 Israeli Jewish students from Tel Aviv University and 80 Palestinian students from Al-Quds University. The participants were structured into a clear experimental matrix. The game was played by an experimental cohort of 60 Israeli Jewish and 45 Palestinian students, and a control group of 40 Israeli Jewish and 35 Palestinian students who received no exposure towards the game at all. So that was the experiment that Dr. Ronit Kampf tried to do in order to prove if this hypothesis or this theory was proven correct or not. So the study evaluated 3 primary hypotheses. The first is that participants would start with an unbiased ethnocentric viewpoints. Second, that playing the game would cause an immediate shift towards impartiality. And third, that players would retain this unbiased perspective one full year later. Whereas the control group, which did not have any exposure towards the game or whatsoever, will not attain or will not have any experiences towards the impartiality. So the final data proved that all three hypotheses were right. The control groups retained their biased viewpoints, the experimental group showed immediate objective impartiality, and most importantly, the 12-month follow-up proved that players permanently retained their balanced perspective. This study shows that interactive media can open a window into human behavior, proving that immense experiences can challenge deep-seated biases and foster an open mind towards peaceful dialogue. So in this report, we learned that strong significance of unbiased and vigilant journalism in mediating war and international conflict is indeed significant. So we also learned that there are possibly a myriad of ways to prevent and resolve war through modern means that our generation or the younger generation is more adapted to. So this also provides a notion that not only those more experienced people or the much older ones who have more experience than us can help towards fostering a more peaceful environment that avoids war, but also us who can also exploit modern ways in order to mediate conflict.